Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining. Sunil here. Welcome to the session. In this session, we learn about how exactly HTTP flow request happens. Whenever end users requests a particular application, how exactly the right information is shown to the end user. So we'll understand the HTTP flow request. One application can have multiple views. In our previous session, we have created project. Inside the project, we have created application. Inside the application, we have created only one view. My dear participants, a particular application can have multiple views. So in today's session, I'll show you an example of how can we create an application with multiple views. We'll also learn creating a Django project, running a Django development server, and running server on different port number, understanding the file structure, creating a web application, understanding the folder structure of the application. So this is what all we have planned for today's session. Let's get started. Okay, look at this. Please look at this. The first point, what you have to understand is a HTTP request flow in Django application. When an end user like you and me request a particular application like Book My Show, how exactly the request will flow to the end user? Let's try to understand. Please look at the diagram. Please look at the diagram. End users like you and me who wants to try to access a particular application sends the request using a URL. You access an application, you want to access Book My Show, or you want to access Zomato, you want to book some flight tickets. So you want to book some train tickets. So how are you sending the request? You always send request using a URL from the web browser. Whenever you send a request, the first request will land to urls.py file. I hope you remember, participants. I hope you remember we have used one file called as urls.py file in our previous session. I hope you remember we have used a file called as urls.py file. We defined the URL pattern in the urls.py file. URL pattern can be display, URL pattern can be greeting. So we define the URLs in the url.py. I hope you remember. Anyways, we'll do it again now for more clarity. In the urls.py, we map to a view. The mapping happens to the view using urls.py. So in specific URL, when an end user sends a request using the URL, your Django server can understand what view needs to be displayed. And that view will be displayed to the response. That particular view will be sent as a response to the end user. In other words, to be more simple, view is nothing but understand that it's a page. So that view will be given to the end user. So remember, our first request lands into urls.py file. From the urls.py file, Django server understands, okay, which view needs to be shown, and that view will be given to the user. That view will be given to the user. I hope I'm explaining clear about how exact the request will be reserved to the Django server, how exactly the right view should be shown to the end user. Let's get started with practicals. The summary of sequence activities related to Django project. What is the step-by-step activities we need to follow when you are dealing with the Django project? The first step is creating a project. We already have learned step one. Step one, what we need to do? We have to create a project. That is step one. We have to create a project. Look at the diagram. We have seen this diagram in a previous session also. Step one, what we have to do, not this one. Step one, what we need to do? We need to create a project. Step two, inside the project, what we need to do? We need to create an application inside the project. Okay, look at this. Step one, we have to create a project. Step two, we have to create an application inside the project. Mention that application in the project where in the settings.py file. I hope you remember. There is a file called as settings.py file. In that particular file, we mention the application which we have created. Next, we have to define the view inside the views.py. We have to define the URL pattern for the view. So linking happens using the URL pattern. Linking happens using the URL patterns. First, we define the view and we define the URL for that particular view. And we start the server and then we send we experience it by sending the request from the user. This is the flow. You have to be very confident, especially in the beginning of Django framework. Every session acts like a base for the next session. Today's session is a base for the tomorrow session. Yesterday's session is a very strong foundation for today's session. There will be dependencies between one session to other session, my friends. In case if you miss a session, I strongly recommend. In case if you miss a session, I strongly recommend to watch the video before coming on to the next session. Let's get started. Let's learn how exactly we can create a project, we can create an application. We have to mention the application settings.py file. All these three steps, we have done it in the previous session. We'll be doing it again, not only again, in every session, we'll be doing it. We'll be learning how can we create a view, how can we map the view to the URL pattern, how can we start the server and send the request. Clear? Clear about this? Look at this. Step one, I want to create a project. Step one, I want to create a project. Step one, I want to create a project. We have created a specific directory called Django projects in D drive. So we already have created first project. I will be removing it. I will be starting from the scratch. Right now it is empty. The first step which I want to do is to create a project. And once we create a project, a folder gets created, we'll enter into that particular project and then we'll create an application called first application. Clear? Clear about this? Okay, so let's get started. This is a location where we are planning to create the project. Let's open the command prompt. Participants, what is the first step? Tell me, what is the first step? The first step is to create a Django project. What is the name of the project? The name of the project which I'm creating is the first project. Let's do that. Project created. As an impact of it. Sorry. So I have to create it in the D drive Django projects. Okay, so let's move to D drive Django projects. Now here I'll be creating my first project. Project created. As part of project creation, you can see a folder got created just now. Next, you need to move inside the project. CD, first project. Inside the project, what is the next thing you need to do? You need to create an application. The next thing what you need to do is to create an application. What is the name of the application which I want to create? First app is the name of the application which I want to create. Inside the project, I am creating participants. Inside the project, I am creating application. Correct. Application got created. What is the name of the application? First application. Inside the project, you can see the application is created. Super. Next. In the settings.py file, you know some set of files which will be generated. We have discussed that in the previous session. There is a file called as settings.py file in your project level. Under the first project, can you see there's a file called as settings.py file. In this settings.py file, you have to mention what application which you want to include in under your project. You have to mention that. So let's open edit plus. Sorry, let's open the editor. Atom editor. Yes. I don't want welcome dialog box. All this. Let me start from the scratch. Add folders. Where did I create the project? In D drive under Django project. This is the first project. We have created a project. Inside the project, what we have created is an application. Inside the project, what we have created is an application. So again, in the project, there's a file called a settings.py file. In this particular settings.py file, I hope you remember, I have one question to you. Every project will have some set of default applications. Isn't it? How many default applications you will have? Tell me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Every project will have set of 6 default applications. Out of 6 applications, we have created a 7th application as per your requirement. The name of the application which you have just now created. The name of the application which you have created is first app. So you have to mention the application which you have created in the settings.py file. So I am now pointing to settings.py file. Along with set of default applications, we have created one new application. So you have to mention that. See, I have created application inside the project. Next. Today's main concern is creating multiple views. Today's main concern is I want to create multiple views. Where should we create the views? The moment you want to create a views, you have to refer to views.py file. The moment you want to refer to you want to create a view, that means you have to refer to a file called as views.py file. Like settings.py file is a predefined file available. There is a file called as views.py file. In this particular views.py file, so you have to define 3 views. I want to define 3 views, my dear friends. Every view is technically a Python function. Every view is technically a Python function. So I'm defining 3 views. Good underscore morning underscore view, good underscore evening underscore view, good underscore afternoon underscore view. I'm defining 3 views. As I have just mentioned, every view is technically a Python function. How do we define the Python function? By using keyword define, function name, and the function body. Every view will take request object as a parameter. That is mandatory. Every view will take a request object. It returns HTTP response. How does the response will be shown to the user? Whenever a user requests a particular URL, how does we get the responses? We get the responses as a web page. So that's an HTTP responses, isn't it? So I want a response. If anybody sends a request to this particular view, I want to get a message as hello friend, good morning. If anybody sends a request to the second view, hello friend, good evening. If anybody sends the request to the third view, good afternoon. So I want to define 3 views. Where should we define the views? In the views.py file. Where is this views.py file? Here you have views.py file. Under application, can you see there is a views.py? You have to be very clear which file belongs on views.py file will be always under application. Settings.py file will be at the project level. So which files will be available at application level, which files will be available at project level, you have to be very clear. So in the views.py file, I will be defining how many views as just mentioned. As just mentioned, I'll be defining 3 views. If you observe this view, there's a HTTP response. So if you want to use the HTTP response, you have to import HTTP response from the Django package. View created. How many views we have created? 3 views. Every view should be mapped to a URL. URLs.py. Look at the HTTP flow request. Every view should be mentioned in the URL.py because the request will go to URL first, and based on the URL, the right view will be mapped. So we have how many views here? We are having how many views here? We have 3 views. So we need to define how many URLs? We need to define 3 URLs. Okay? Okay. URLs.py. So go to URLs.py. Where is this URLs.py file? Is it at application level? Can you see we have views.py, test.py, models.py, admin.py. Do we have URLs.py? No. It is not available at the application level. It is available at the project level. So at the project level, there is a file called as URLs.py. This is a file called as URLs.py. In this URLs.py, please observe what I'm doing here. I'm importing the views which I have created. I'm importing the views which I have created. Where is this views created? The views are created at the application level. So from my application, I'm importing the views. From the application, I'm importing the views, and in the URL pattern, this is one defined URL, predefined URL pattern. I'm including 3 more URL patterns. The view name is good morning underscore view. Do you remember? If you want to go back to the views.py file, can you see good underscore morning underscore view, good underscore evening underscore view, good underscore afternoon underscore. So what is a URL? I'm writing morning as one URL, afternoon as one URL, and evening as one URL. So these are the URLs which I'm defining. Where I'll go to URLs.py file, and I am defining the corresponding URLs. Same. Fine. Every view is mapped to a particular URL. Perfect. Very good. Next. Next. Let's start the server. How do we start the server? We have to run the Django server. Py manage.py and mention the run server command. So Django server will be started. So under the first project, I'll be running the command py manage.py followed with the command run server. The server gets executed. Perfect. There are no errors. There are no issues. Okay. You are not getting any errors. This is the URL. This is the default URL. But the URL pattern, what you have provided in the urls.py is default pattern along with morning. So this is the default pattern. Along with the default pattern, I'm using the pattern morning. So I'll get the morning view. Because hello friends, good morning. So this particular URL, observe this particular URL. So end user is requesting. So end user is requesting. Exit. Let me open this using Paint so that I can modify it. So end user is sending a request using this URL. This is the URL. Copy the URL. Isn't it? This is the URL. When a user submits a URL, the link will go to urls.py. In the urls.py, what is the URL? I'm using /morning. It understands very /morning that is linked to good_morning_view. So it goes to views.py. It checks good_morning_view, and this is the response which is given to the user saying that hello friend, good morning. Got it? Perfect. Yes. So the first landing happens to the urls.py that you have to realize. And from the urls.py, the corresponding view is linked, and then we get the responses. Let's say if I use another URL. Good afternoon. So you should get what page? Good afternoon page. Similarly, if you use good evening URL, you should get the good evening view. You should not say it as page. Technically, it is a view. You should get good evening. Hmm? Good evening. You're getting the good evening. Got it? Perfect. So I just want to show you that can we have multiple views in an application? Yes. So first hierarchy, my dear friends, hierarchy you have to be very clear. Step one, we have to create a project. Step two, inside the project, we have to create application. Step three, inside the application, we have to create views. And the view should be linked to urls.py. That's it. One project, one to many. One project can have multiple applications. One application can have multiple views. An application can have. Clear? Clear about this? Okay. Let's look at another example. I want to showcase about a project having multiple applications. One project, I want to have multiple applications. In all examples till now, whatever we have discussed, a project is having only one application. But can you have a project with multiple applications? Yes, you can see the diagram. If you can see, a project can have a number of applications, not this one. A project can have a number of applications, so loans application, credit card application, customer care application, all these applications under a particular project. So I want to explain you a project with multiple applications. Let's get started. I want to start from the scratch. So I want to stop this particular Django development server, control C. Okay, to stop the Django development server, close the terminal. I want to remove this particular in D drive first project. What I want to close this particular files from my editor, remove the project folder, closes all these files, and start from the scratch. First project also I want to remove it. Delete. Create. First step, create a project. First step, create the project, open the command prompt, point to the location where you want to create the project. That is important. Point to the location where you want to create the project. I want to create the project in D drive. So I'm pointing to D drive. Django projects folder. Perfect. Django project folder. Perfect. Now create the project. Create the first project created. Inside the project, I have to create two applications. One is greeting application, the other one is time application. I hope you remember how to create an application. First, enter into the project, CD first project. Inside the project, I want to create an application, Python manage.py, start app followed with the application name. I want to create two applications. First application. Second application. I have created two applications. Next, in the settings.py file, you have to include these two application names in the settings.py file. Agree? Isn't it? Settings.py file will have installed app, will have 6 default apps, and we have to include two more applications. These are the common steps. We are doing it in every example. So let's go to settings.py file. Add folders, D drive, Django project, first project folder I'm adding. So at the project level, under first project, you will find a file called as settings.py file. In the settings.py file, there'll be 6 default apps. I'm including 2 more apps. Greetings app. Time. I'm including 2 apps and I'm saving my perfect. Every app should have a view, is it? Every app should have a view. So go to views.py file. Application level views.py file will be there. I want to go to first application, greetings app. In the greetings app. So where is our first application? Under the project, you have greetings app. Greetings app will have views.py file. Times app will have views.py file. Every app will have corresponding views.py file. I'm going to views. Import the HTTP response object, which we always do it. I'm defining a view. When I'm saying I'm defining a view, you have to create a page. Every view is technically a Python function. Every view is technically a Python function. Hello, friends. Good morning. Have a nice day. Okay. So I have created a view in the first application. Next, I want to create a view in the second application, in the time application. So this is views created in the time application. Also, there's a views.py file. Again, the same, import the HTTP response objects. I'm defining a view. So what I'm doing in the view, okay, so I am using date time package .now method, which returns the current time, and I want to show the current time to the user. Hello, current date and time is. I'm using concatenation. I am using time, a string method to convert into time. Time will be converted to string, and then I want to include it in H1, and then I'm giving the HTTP response. This particular value string will show the current date and time. So this is the second view. So how many views I have created? There is one view in the first application. There is one view in the second application. And I have to include it in the urls.py file. I have to include it in the urls.py file. Next step, once the views are defined, immediately you need to go to urls.py file. Participants, where is this urls.py file available? The urls.py file is always available at the project level. So go to project level. Under project, you can see there is a urls.py file. Right now, there are no URLs defined. There's only one URL, the default URL. I'll be defining my URL. First, you have to import the views. Only then you can define the URL. You have to import the views. How many views you have created? 2 views. Okay. So these 2 lines, import views from the application, from the package name dot views name, import the greeting view. Okay. Clearly mention the view which you want to import. From import statements is always advantage. So go for from import statements and then define the URL patterns. For the greetings view, the greeting is the URL. For time information view, time is the URL. Mention the corresponding URLs. That's it. That's it. Participants, I think we have done. Now reach to the particular URL, the corresponding function views will be triggered. Start the server. Open the command prompt. py manage.py server. Perfect. Greeting. Perfect. Greeting page. Greeting view. Time view. Switch to copy and paste. Some problem with the time view. Definitely with respect to this particular concatenation. Go to use.py in the time map. Beginning of the string, end of the string, beginning of the string, end of the string. You have to import a date time object. Without importing date time object, it will not be recognized. I have not imported the date time object. That is the problem. Import the date time object. Now the view will successfully work. The date time will be recognized. Save it. Refresh. Automatically, you don't need to restart the server. Automatically, the problem will be rectified and you get the server date, system date and time. Perfect. So what is the new thing what I have learned, what we have learned in this session? The new thing what I have shown you is that one project can have multiple views, 1:2 ratio, 1:n ratio. One project can have multiple applications and one application can have multiple views. One application can have multiple views. We can also simplify it in the urls.py. You can, instead of writing a very long view names, you can have aliases in the urls.py. So instead of importing long names, you can have an aliases. from import views as v1, views as v2. So then you can include this kind of, so instead of writing complete view name, you can just mention the alias name. This will also works fine. Refresh. See, you're not getting any responses. Perfect. You are getting the perfect responses. Perfect. Okay. So this is what I have decided in today's session. So my dear friends, keep in mind you have to follow the structure. Create structure is create project, under project create application, under application create views, link the views to URL, and that's how your URL should work. Practice is very, very important. It is not as easy as normal Python. Okay, because dependency between one session to other session is very, very key. Okay, so please practice this today's session and see you tomorrow for much more learning on building applications using Django framework. Until then, good time. Thank you very much.